Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I, of course, found very particularly interesting. And the reason why I found this video very particularly interesting is because this is going to be another conversation on the Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Triple G Golovkin fight that I do believe is going to happen this Saturday. And this is a very particularly interesting fight. Now, in my view, a trilogy match probably between these two would have been a little bit more interesting, probably about 3 to 4 years ago, when I think that Triple G probably would have been in a better position. And Triple G, if we're really going to be honest, I don't know if he would have been any much better in the trilogy against Canelo a few years back. And some people may say, well, what are you talking about? Because he would have been younger. Yes, but ever since Gennady Golovkin lost that rematch to Canelo Alvarez, I don't think that he really has looked like the same fighter. I don't see overall the same amount of confidence in his style. I don't see overall the same punch resistance. I just overall don't see the same Gennady Golovkin that I once did. Not saying that he is still not a decent fighter, but he's about on the A minus level right now in my view, and some would even debate that he's not even there. I would give him enough respect to say that he's probably on the A minus level right now, and since both him and Canelo Alvarez have fought before, this could be a very particularly dangerous fight for Canelo, almost like when you talk about that Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius fight. And of course, this fight should be, is going to be a more upper grade opponent when it comes down to it than what a Robert Helenius would be, because Robert Helenius has never really been an A grade pedigree fighter. But Gennady Golovkin is supposed to lose this fight. However, this is particularly interesting. What Mr. Boxing Ego is going to bring up is a very interesting series of points. And what he's going to bring up is Canelo Alvarez looking past Gennady Golovkin? Or all in all, is he somewhat mentally affected because of that Dimitri Bivol loss? Mr. Boxing Ego believes, all in all, that there might be a little bit of a character change with Mr. Canelo Alvarez, the way that he is talking in this fight, and that it may be a little bit too dangerous to look for the knockout. Which, could that be true? It certainly could be. You never know what's going through these fighters' minds. It is going to be very particularly interesting. But let's see what Mr. Boxing Ego has to say. Let's get into it.
We unpack. I just thought of it. Canelo Alvarez, I was born ready, is playing a very dangerous career move in a career game. He says he is going to knock out Triple G and end his career. Why is that difficult? Why is that something that could be problematic and dangerous for Canelo Alvarez? That's what I want to talk about in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. On the road to 300,000 subscribers. Please join, hit the subscribe button. Let's get there. Canelo Alvarez, I've seen some of first of all, this fight has no promotion. Canelo versus Triple G3. The only promotion really just started when Fight Week, grand arrivals and whatnot, and now some media scrums, so you'll be able to find some content. Before that, I didn't really see any advertisements, before basically the last 7 days. I haven't really seen much. And that's kind of weird because when HBO was around and they had a fight like Canelo Golovkin 1 and Canelo Golovkin 2, even though Canelo Golovkin 1 was weeks after Floyd Mayweather McGregor, HBO still did a good job and made it visible and promoted. So I don't really understand the strategy with DAZN Boxing, that they're paying all this money to Triple G, paying all this money to Canelo, and not promoting the fight. That leads me to believe that desperate times call for desperate measures, and maybe they're bankrolling so much money on the main event and certain fights that they don't want to spend anything extra to really get it off the ground. Like that, it's like suck.
Well, I think overall that is what you're hoping for. And let's be real, the reason why you're hoping for that is because you want the PBC, who is owned overall by a black American manager, Mr. Al Heyman. You want that to be the be-all, end-all of boxing promotion. And I get it to a degree. It's a great thing what Al Heyman and the PBC have been able to do. But do I believe that the zone overall, or whatever you call it, however you pronounce it, do I believe that they've also been able to do very well? Yes, I do. I think all in all that if they were not able to do very well, I think that they probably would have went under already, or that you would have seen significant changes overall like that of the Top Rank. Now, Top Rank, in my view, has not been doing well now for the past several years, and that's why eventually they got rid of HBO boxing. But anyway, but I just think all in all that this fight pretty much sells itself. I think all in all that Canelo Alvarez, that they're pretty much relying on his star power. I think that the zone thinks that this fight is going to sell itself, at least with somewhat a decent pay-per-view numbers. If I had to guess what amount of numbers this pay-per-view was going to do, I wouldn't really be surprised with whatever numbers that it does. I wouldn't be surprised if this pay-per-view does just over 300,000. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up doing 700,000. I would not predict anything higher than 700,000 though. And the reason why that is because a lot of boxing fans, or a lot of people in general, know more than likely that Gennady Golovkin, that he probably is not the same fighter. And most people who ended up seeing his recent matches against Sergey Dervyachenko, or even a little bit against Steve Rolls, and boy, he looked decent against Steve Rolls. But the other fighter, I believe, that one Japanese fighter, Gennady overall really has not looked like the same fighter. Now, he may look a little bit different against Canelo because he may be going 100% all out in this fight. He may pull 100% of himself out of himself overall, or the the monster out of himself, in order to try to win this fight, almost like a trapped animal in the corner, who believes that it's about to die. Even if it is about to die, it's going to give you one hell of a fight. So this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight.
The fighter pay and purse has sucked the budget up, if you will, right? Which is foolish. It's just like imagine a rapper with a 500K budget to make an album, and then he spends 250,000 on one beat from Dr. Dre. If you're trying to make a 10 to 20 song, 20 track album, and you spent half of your budget on one beat from Dr. Dre, that just doesn't make much sense. You know,
Well, the difference is there, Mr. Ego, is that this is not a 10 to 20 song album. So I don't really think that that's the best of comparisons. Canelo Alvarez already is clearly the biggest star in all of boxing. And people can get mad at that all they want to. I really don't know why a certain amount of people get mad at it. Well, I mean, I know why that is, but there's just really no apparent reason to really deny it. There's no reason to. Canelo very obviously is the biggest attraction in all the boxing right now. Whether you have him at the number one pound for pound spot, I don't personally right now, because he did lose his last fight, but I do have him clearly within my top five. You maybe could even debate him as number two, even after that most recent loss. Anywhere from 2 to 5, in my view, he's no lower than 5. But when it comes down to Mr. Canelo, I think they believe that this fight is going to sell itself. So, I don't think that there is a need, at least in their eyes, to promote it a month out, or 3 to 2 weeks out. Most fight promotions that I see pretty much now, the fight is only promoted about a week or two in advance. I've seen the same thing with Andrew Ruiz and Luis Ortiz. Now, one may debate, well, that fight is not as big as this one. Well, you could debate it, but really the past several fights that I've seen, I haven't really seen them really advertised, until the final week. Even with Fury and Deontay Wilder, when it came down, I don't believe that fight was advertised really until the final week. So I understand where Mr. Ego is going at, but let's be real. A big part of the reason why he's stating the things that he is because A, he doesn't want to make it seem like Canelo Alvarez has as big a star power as he does, and B, he also wants to make it seem like DAZN is eventually going to go out of business. And who knows? Could they? Maybe. But right now, the way that they look, I don't think that they look that bad at all. But we'll see what happens.
because you're spending such a large portion on in bankrolling and hoping that everything works in with one song, instead of diversifying a bit more. But the reason why I said what I said at the beginning is Canelo Alvarez, I keep seeing his fight week antics. He's making it sound like there's this personal beef and disdain for Golovkin. He keeps saying Golovkin is fake. He's saying Golovkin's a phony, and he wants to punish Golovkin. And when this fight was first announced, I was like, this is a Canelo show, things like that. Or actually, let me rephrase that. When I knew, because they said Canelo, before he lost to Bivol, they said Canelo Alvarez was going to fight Triple G next after the Bivol fight, presuming he got past Bivol. Now, even though he didn't get past Bivol, he still decided to fight against Triple G instead of rematching the guy that just beats him, which is a bad look, and that's a whole nother story. But
Well, no, it's not really a bad look because Canelo Alvarez ended up losing it 8 rounds to 4. I think that maybe had the fight been a split decision, that maybe overall would have been a very bad look. But in my view, when a fighter loses a fight, especially dominantly, and dominantly, when I say dominantly, I'm talking at least 8 rounds to 4. Now, some of you may have even seen that fight 7 rounds to 5 for Dimitri Bivol. I've even heard of certain people say that they thought Canelo Alvarez won, but no. In my view, Canelo lost 8 rounds to 4. Mr. Ego himself had it about 9 rounds to 3, 10 rounds to 2. We all know, for those of us at a live school, that the fight was not that far apart, but we all know what Mr. Ego, what his opinions are about Canelo. We all know that his emotion is a lot of the times going to get in the way whenever he tries to analyze Mr. Canelo Alvarez. But anyways, when it comes down to it, no, in my view, it's not that bad of a look, because some fighters, even the greatest of fighters like Canelo Alvarez, and he is a great fighter, an all-time great fighter, even in my opinion. Sometimes after those losses, you need to take a deep breath, and overall you need to reflect and say, why did I lose that fight? What mistakes did I make? And Canelo, in my view, not only did he have some of the wrong strategies in that fight, but he just gained way too much weight. He gained way too much muscle mass, and that's why after the 4th round, he had no stamina whatsoever. I mean, not only did he have enough stamina to not throw any punches, overall he could not even keep his hands up in that fight. And that's how I knew that Canelo overall made a massive mistake there, because at least with Canelo against Caleb Plant, and Canelo has always had somewhat of stamina issues. That's never really going to go away. But at least against Caleb Plant and Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders and Danny Jacobs, he was always somewhat keeping his hands up and overall moving, and he was always somewhat throwing punches or defending himself. He wasn't doing any of that in the Dimitri Bivol fight. That's not me trying to make an excuse. I give full on credit to Dimitri Bivol, but it was very clear to me that his stamina was very, very poor in that fight. So that's also going to be another thing about Canelo. How will his stamina look in this fight?
The reason why I think this is a bad look for Canelo is because he's doing a lot of talking. He picked and he tried to dig up a fight that people wanted to see 4 or 5 years ago, and now he's trying to drudge that fight up, and he's basically putting a lot of pressure on himself. And if he can do what he's saying he's going to do and stop Golovkin, then that's about the best thing he can hope for. However, the more I start
Well, of course, it's the best thing that he can hope for. Anyway.
looking at this fight, I do realize at the end of the day, Golovkin has really nothing to lose because everybody is.
I would agree. So let's all remember what Mr. Boxing Ego has stated. So what is he basically telling you? This is a very dangerous fight for Canelo Alvarez. Now, in my view, if I were going to say what grade Gennady Golovkin is at the moment, I would say that he's about A minus. I would say that he's probably on the same level as the threat as a Jamal Charlo right now, because Gennady Golovkin in his prime, or when he was at his most dangerous, Gennady Golovkin, you could debate, was an A-plus fighter, at least in terms of the threat that he brought, because in my view, Canelo Alvarez is an A-plus fighter, and the only fighter in recent years besides Dimitri Bivol, or let me put it this way, the only fighter that was around Canelo Alvarez's own same size, or maybe slightly bigger by a weight class in him, that was even able to give Canelo Alvarez that much problems in multiple fights, was Gennady Golovkin. Gennady overall was a tremendous fighter, overall a very dangerous fighter in his peak, but I just don't know if Gennady Golovkin is on that same level anymore.
Doubting him. He's 40 years old. He's moving up from one.
However, the point that Mr. Ego does bring up is a very interesting one, and that is the question, is Canelo Alvarez feeling a great amount of pressure here? Is he maybe doing this to promote the fight? Is he maybe doing this because maybe he's not as motivated as he was once upon a time for the Gennady Golovkin fight, so he has to somewhat pull some motivation overall out of himself and make something a little bit extra out of nothing? It could be any one of those excuses. Or could it be that the Dimitri Bivol loss is a little bit in his head, and all in all, when it comes down to it, he is embarrassed by that loss, and he wants to put on that much of a great performance, and could that affect his performance? It very well could. We'll have to see. Like I said, sometimes after even great fighters lose, their fight after that, they don't look so good. So we'll have to see overall what ends up happening. I would not be surprised by any result, but I do expect Canelo Alvarez to win.
60 to an unknown, uncharted territory at 168, where Canelo has more experience. And the more I started thinking about it,
these people always bring up the point of Canelo Alvarez. Oh, he wants Jamal Charlo to move up to 168. He wants Gennady Golovkin to move to the 168 where they have no experience. All that is an excuse. And don't get me wrong, I get somewhat what they're getting at because when you fight at a higher weight class, yeah, you're adjusted against fighters that more than likely could potentially hit harder or all in all, are going to be bigger in stature, so you're already going to be more well adjusted. But once again, if we're going to use that excuse, do you know how many fights we would have to cop out? And in my opinion, it's just not a viable enough excuse because it's not like 160 to 168 is just a drastic change. It's not like it is in the UFC where if you go up a weight class, it could possibly be a difference by 15 to 20 pounds sometimes. It's not like that. So it just is what it is. Gennady Golovkin is going to have to perform well in the fight if he wants to win the fight. That's not going to be an excuse. When Juan Manuel Marquez fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., he had to move up 2 weight classes. Now, Floyd, all in all, is probably not naturally a welterweight, but he was already adjusted, I believe, overall to fighting, at welterweight before Floyd Mayweather Jr. fought him. All right? So it just is what it is. I believe also when Floyd Mayweather Jr. Fought a couple of other guys, Ricky Hatton, he was already adjusted at fighting people at 147. So we can use this excuse all the living long damn day. We can use this excuse all day. When Mikey Garcia fought Errol Spence, he was adjusted to, 135 pounds and 140. He never went up to 147 before. When Guillermo Rigondeaux fought Lomachenko, I believe he was only adjusted to 126 or somewhere around there. So we can use this excuse all the living long damn day. But overall, Mr. Eagle will only use that excuse with certain fighters that he wants to take credit away from. Because you notice he never uses it with Floyd Mayweather Jr. or, Terrence Bud Crawford if he were to fight someone like that. Or, all in all, some other fighter like an Errol Spence Jr. So just cut the bullshit.
I'm realizing that Triple G, he really has nothing to lose. He really
Well, he has somewhat to lose, but I do understand what you mean, Mr. Ego. One could debate that there's a lot less pressure on Triple G or Gennady Triple G Golovkin than what there is on Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. So this is still a dangerous fight for Canelo.
doesn't because he's expected to lose. People are saying he looked older in his Ryota Murata fight, definitely in the Deryevchenko fight.
Well, you said that he looked older in those fights as well. So, Mr. Ego, what are you trying to say? Because some of these guys, all in all, they will overall a week before the fight state all in all how this fight is potentially dangerous. But then after Canelo Alvarez is victorious, especially in a dominant fashion, what do they say? Oh well, that dude was nothing. So what do you truly believe about the fight? In my view, and this is my consistent opinion, this is still a potentially dangerous fight. But this is a fight that Canelo Alvarez does need to win because he is going to be majorly favored in this fight. I would not say that Canelo is a 10-1 favorite or a 7-1 favorite, but I would at least have Canelo at the circumstances right now as a 3-1, maybe 5-1 favorite. So he does need to win this fight.
Saying he got hit too much in the Murata fight. He's the guy who's 40, going to be 41, and he's just been cool. He's been calm, collected, and very quiet. So the more Canelo talks to try to hype this up and say he's going to destroy Triple G, he's actually putting himself in a very precocious and dangerous position the more I started thinking about it. Because
Well, I would agree, Mr. Ego, and you also should have thought about that with Mr. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. And a lot of people will be like, why do you always bring up that card when it comes to him? Because that is the main example of even though I think Ego can be a very logical commentator at times, oftentimes or a couple of times here and there, he will let his emotion get the best of him. Canelo Alvarez is one of those examples, and Deontay Wilder was another great example of that. But I also bring up Deontay Wilder because, just like I stated, and when I noticed that Deontay Wilder was wearing the headphones against Mr. Tyson Fury in the press conference, I knew right then and there that Tyson Fury was completely in Deontay Wilder's head. And the reason why that was because Tyson Fury was acting like the same character that he always had been. And Mr. Ego was one of these guys claiming that, oh, well, Fury, something's mentally off with him. I can feel this, I can feel that. But overall, when it came down to it, I knew what was actually going on because when Deontay Wilder overall put those headphones on, and I always stated this, it's not necessarily overall when you see someone maybe, necessarily do something eccentric or erratic. What overall should be going off in your head as an alarm is when someone's character changes. So when Deontay Wilder went to this huge, boisterous, and braggadocious overall Black Panther type of character when it came down to it, and then all of a sudden he became very, very quiet, and did not even try to talk to Tyson Fury, that should have told you that mentally, all in all, he was coming in as a different fighter when it came down to it, or that Tyson Fury was somewhat in his head. Now, does that mean that every single time, just because a fighter is quiet, that all in all, that fighter's in their head? No, that can just mean that they're focused. But the way that Deontay Wilder was acting, I could tell immediately that Tyson Fury was in his head. Immediately. And that's a big part of the reason why Deontay Wilder lost that fight the third time the way that he did. Do I think that Gennady Golovkin is in Canelo Alvarez's head? I don't know if he's necessarily in Canelo Alvarez's head. I'm not really sure what's going on with Canelo Alvarez, but I do think that maybe there's a possibility that Canelo is trying to put on a little bit more hot sauce on this fight, or a little bit more sauce on this fight, either A, to promote the fight, or maybe because he needs to be a little bit more motivated for the fight than what he actually is. So we'll see what happens.
If he cannot do what he's saying he's going to do, and this fight is extremely tight and close, like the first two fights, or God forbid, if he loses, then his career is going to be in ruins. You know?
No, his career is not really going to be in ruins if the fight is close. But you will say that all in all because that's basically what you want it to be. And, look at basically what Mr. Boxing Ego just stated there. Now, one would expect overall someone to say that if Canelo Alvarez has lost the Gennady Triple G Golovkin fight, then all in all his career would be in ruins. But Canelo Alvarez's career is not going to be in ruins overall just because he has a close competitive fight with Triple G, a fighter on the know that he has had two very competitive fights with in the past. So, I mean, unless maybe you're talking about, Canelo Alvarez being wrecked up mentally because, he overall did not live up to his own expectations. But I don't think that's what Mr. Boxing Ego is trying to say here. Does anyone think overall from these channels that if Deontay Wilder has a close fight with Robert Elenius, that his career is just in shambles? None of them would ever say that. So that shows you that his motivation from the bat is hoping that Canelo Alvarez loses to Gennady Golovkin, or hoping that he looks overall somewhat competitive. That way he can say, "Oh, well, look, Canelo's career is over." That's what this whole main objective is with Mr. Boxing Ego. I don't think that every single point that he's bringing up is a bad point, but the main machinations and motivations behind it are basically overall hoping that Canelo Alvarez will lose so he doesn't have to deal with his ass being in the pound-for-pound conversation again. That's all this is about.
We all know throughout the history of boxing, the ones that overly talk and boast and brag about what's to come, it usually doesn't play out well for them if they can't make those things actually come alive and enter fruition.
Well, not always necessarily. Because when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, it's not like Canelo Alvarez all in all is constantly talking shit on Gennady Golovkin or overall like he's a Conor McGregor. I don't really get that vibe. Now, when I seen Conor McGregor against Khabib Nurmagomedov, the way that he was talking, I said, okay, you know what, something's up. Because the way that he was talking, and Conor usually takes it to pretty extreme levels, but he took that all in all to like very, very extreme levels. And that's how I could tell, okay, he knows that this is going to be a very, very hard fight. I just think that Canelo Alvarez is trying to pull motivation out of himself. And I remember all in all in the rematch that Canelo Alvarez was kind of talking shit about Gennady Golovkin in the rematch as well. But Golovkin, all in all, on his side, they've been talking shit about Canelo Alvarez a little bit as well. Golovkin, all in all, has seemed a little bit uncomfortable to me as well. They've already stated that they believe that Canelo Alvarez is just an average boxer. At least that's what Max Golovkin said. Golovkin, all in all, stated a certain amount of things. So, obviously, Golovkin, in my view, he's a little bit rattled up as well. But we'll see all know what happens.
So the more I think about it, Canelo's putting himself in really a do or die position because he's talking. And that's almost
Well, in my view, Canelo Alvarez really is in a do or die position. He doesn't have to knock Gennady Golovkin out. The fight really doesn't even have to be, in my view, super duper wide. Just because this is going to be a comeback fight, and who knows with the confidence levels of Canelo Alvarez. Now, what he has shown us in the past is that once upon a time when he did lose to Floyd Mayweather Jr., his confidence was able to recover very well. But that was against a much lesser fighter in, his next fight, I believe against Alfredo Angulo, who was only, now that's an average Mexican fighter, overall, but, not Canelo. But when it comes down to it all in all, this is going to be very particularly interesting. But in a way, this is a do or die fight for Canelo Alvarez. He is going to have to win. And if he doesn't win, then yes, his career very well may be in shambles because he's going to be expected to win this fight.
Uncharacteristic. The other thing is this is if it doesn't work out for Canelo Alvarez, then that'll be if he loses, that's obviously the worst because that'll be two back-to-back losses for a person.
Well, I agree. If he ends up losing this fight, I don't really see Canelo Alvarez ever recovering from that. If Canelo Alvarez loses to Gennady Golovkin when he's 40 years old and clearly not the same fighter, that's pretty much it for Canelo Alvarez. I don't expect much else from him when it comes down to it. Hopefully, overall, Canelo Alvarez at least looks somewhat impressive because I would like to see him in future fights. I think that he has still a very promising future career, but you never know.
Who's considered a superstar in boxing. But it appears that Canelo's arrogance or ego has not been fully checked and fully humbled from the Dimitri Bivol loss because, in my honest, sincere opinion, I believe he underestimated Dimitri Bivol and he thought, oh, I knocked Kovalev out with two punches.
I think that he underestimated Bivol as well, and that's that's Mr. Boxing Ego telling you that. So once again, these guys always say this shit about Canelo Alvarez, but they always tell you the truth about what they truly believe. Eventually, which is always pretty much the same shit that I always say. Anyway.
Even though that fight looked FA.
And I don't think all in all that, Canelo Alvarez's ego is too bad here. But Canelo does need to take Gennady Golovkin seriously. But hopefully, if he is smart enough, he will. And I think that he will, because I think Canelo Alvarez knows that what this means for his career.
And he thought it was going to be sweet with Dimitri Bivol. And he just...
Well, I don't think that he thought that it was going to be sweet with Dimitri Bivol. I think that he just thought that he was going to be good enough. And I think that he thought that, all in all, that gaining enough muscle mass that kind of like Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, they would not be able to withstand his power. But Canelo thought wrong. So if he is going to defeat Dimitri Bivol in a rematch, not only all in all is he going to have to come in there with way, 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 way better conditioning, but he's also going to have to come in there with a little bit of a different strategy, somewhat of the same. Because in my view, if Canelo is going to defeat Dimitri Bivol, he is going to have to pressure him kind of like what he did in the first part of the fight. But Canelo Alvarez is going to have to change some things in that fight. In my view, he doesn't have to do a complete reanimation like what a Wilder had to do against Fury or anything like that. But he is going to have to change certain strategy points, and he's going to have to be in way better conditioning because his conditioning in that fight was absolutely awful.
Recklessly and carelessly tried to batter Bivol like as if he wasn't a top champion or a good fighter.
Well, I thought you all in all stated that Mr. Dimitri Bivol, in your opinion, that he was just a weak European fighter. So what overall do you guys truly believe? Once again, these channels are so very particularly interesting. This is why you cannot trust channels like these, or really so many people in general, because they're just so wishy-washy. You can tell that half of the shit they say, they don't truly believe. One day, all in all, Dimitri Bivol is a very, very great fighter. Then the next day, all in all, he's a person that is just another weak European fighter. So which one is it? Anyway.
Or a champion. He tried to treat it like it was Avni Yildirim, and he was made to pay because Bivol had a great...
No, I don't think that he tried to treat it like Avni Yildirim, but I think that he tried to treat it like Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders, and I think that he thought that, okay, well, this is a light heavyweight fight. As long as I gain a little bit of muscle, it'll scare him all in all, into thinking that I can probably hurt him and knock him out. But Canelo thought very, very wrong, because Dimitri Bivol not only is probably better than what a Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders were, and I still think that those are both A-grade fighters. I just think that they're A- fighters. Dimitri Bivol is pretty much better than 99% of the opponents that Canelo was ever going to face in his career. So if Canelo was going to defeat Dimitri Bivol in a rematch, he's going to have overall way better stamina than what he did. I thought that his defense was good within the first 4 rounds, but after that it was awful because he couldn't even hold his hands up. He's going to have way better stamina, all in all, when it comes down to it. And he's going to have to change his strategy a little bit more, but mainly that conditioning. The conditioning needs to be much better.
Strategy and, just took the fight out of Canelo for real. And now Canelo could be making that same mistake if Triple G has something left and is somehow able to put it all together and put up similar fights to the first two fights. Even if Canelo beats Triple G, if he beats him in the fashion of the first two fights where people are like, I don't know, and scratching their head and confused as to who won the fight, then this is going to be a huge.
Well, the first fight I thought Gennady Golovkin won. The second fight I thought Canelo Alvarez won. In my view, even though both of those fights were competitive, they were not really extraordinarily hard to score. Canelo was just better. He was more well adjusted in the rematch against Gennady Golovkin. I scored it for Canelo. In the first fight, all in all, I thought Golovkin clearly should have won in 7 rounds to 5. Maybe you could even argue a little bit wider, like 8 rounds to 4. But 7 rounds to 5 is probably pretty accurate. Do I see that fight, all in all, being that competitive? No, I do not, but we'll see what happens.
Blow to Canelo. And I think him trying to force the beef has only made it worse because he's saying Golovkin's phony. I'm going to knock him out. There's another interview. You guys got to just peep. Just type in Canelo Golovkin beef or whatever, or go on YouTube and just find some of the latest statements from Canelo. He's also said that from round one, he's going to try to obliterate Golovkin and things like that. So the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm realizing Canelo is uncharacteristically putting a lot of pressure on himself because at the end of the day, Golovkin, one thing we know, hey, no, guys, is he got a chin and he has power. Like, this is not like a.
He does, but unfortunately for Mr. Gennady Golovkin, I don't think that he has it in spades as what he once did. But we'll see what happens. I could be wrong. Gennady could look a little bit different than what he did within the first, within his most previous fights, like against Sergey Dervyachenko, or overall against, what the hell was that dude's name? Ryoto Murata, I believe was his name. Anyway.
Caleb Plant type of fight where, no disrespect to Caleb Plant, that's my dude, but he's not necessarily known for being the biggest puncher. So Caleb.
Yes, what Caleb Plant is really known for is his slick ability, all in all, overall to move around the ring and his defensive style. That's mainly what he's known for. And you yourself, Mr. Ego, thought that that was a very interesting matchup going into it. But then, just like I predicted, when it came down to it after the fight occurred, you basically gave Canelo Alvarez no credit whatsoever. So Mr. Ego, even though a lot of the times he will not make bad points, and in my view, a lot of the times he will make better points than especially what Anarchy TV or Dante's Boxing Nation will make, for example, he also will let his emotions get in the way a lot of the times as well.
Plant's bread and butter would more so be to try to outbox Canelo. This is Golovkin, who has a great jab, so he has that fundamental, and he has a chin and he has power. And it really just sounds like, at least from what Canelo is stating, and I hope he didn't train like this, and I hope he's not envisioning, I aged him out and now he's a sucker.
You hope all in all he didn't train like this. Mr. Ego, stop lying. What you hope overall for this fight is that you hope that Mr. Canelo Alvarez, at worst overall, gets knocked the hell out in this fight. Just stop. You hope that Canelo didn't train like this. You hate Canelo Alvarez with a burning passion. Let's just stop the bullshit right here. Okay? Stop lying. All right? And listen, I know the difference between someone who is a hater, and I know the difference all in all between someone that just gives critiques. Boxing Ego does not like Canelo as far as you can see him. He hates him. Okay? It just is what it is. And not every point that Mr. Boxing Ego always brings up about Canelo is always a bad point. But a lot of the times he lets his emotions get in the way because he does not want Canelo Alvarez to ever be remembered as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter ever again.
Doug, because I'm starting to get weary. What Canelo Alvarez is saying in these interviews makes it sound like he's doing what he did to Bivol, which is underestimating Triple G.
Well, I don't know all in all if he's doing the same thing with Bivol, because Canelo Alvarez, when he was up against Dimitri Bivol, I don't really remember him trash-talking him whatsoever. But it should be very interesting. I do understand the point that Mr. Ego is trying to bring up. Now, do I think that he's fishing a little bit because he wants Canelo Alvarez to lose? Yes, a little bit. But some of the points that he does bring up do have merit.
And that's not good because Triple G, at the very heart of it, gave you 2 tough fights. So if you're just thinking Triple G is going to be sweet because you got his number, you waited, you aged him out, and you have more experience at the higher weight classes.
Well, allegedly aged him out, but apparently you didn't want to see the Gennady Golovkin fight for a third time. And on top of that, remember, this is the same guy that stated that he wanted to see Jamal Charlo versus Gennady Golovkin, even though Gennady Golovkin is 40-something years old. So, come on. Now, understandably, Gennady was not too keen on facing Jamal Charlo or Andrade or some of the other guys because he was clearly waiting on that Canelo Alvarez trilogy. And I think Gennady Golovkin, no matter what happens in this fight, I think that he's pretty much going to ride off into the sunset. I think that that's about it. Unless he does win this fight overall, then maybe there would be a fourth, but I just don't see it.
Or Ryota Murata was touching him, and then he puts up performances closer to his first two fights, then it's going to spell trouble for Canelo. So we may very well be close to the end of the Canelo me era. You know what I'm saying?
And here we go. And that's all what he's concerned about. The past videos that I've always overall reviewed with Mr. Boxing Ego, when it comes to Mr. Canelo Alvarez, what does he always say at the end of the video? Oh, well, we're coming to the end of the Canelo Alvarez era. Once again, when Deontay Wilder overall was losing to Tyson Fury, did he ever state that, well, Deontay Wilder is done, he's over? No, he didn't say that, even though that probably was the logical appraisal. And the reason why that was is because he was in love with the man. It is what it is. He does not like Canelo as far as he can see him, so he wants Canelo Alvarez to lose this Saturday. Make no mistake about it. Now, do I understand to a degree what he is saying? Yes. Do I think that sometimes he's maybe taking it overall a little bit too far? Yeah, probably, but we will see what happens. We will see how Canelo is mentally in this fight.
Because, depending on how this fight plays out, if there's any level of controversy, it's a bad look. The other thing I was thinking of, even if Canelo were to do what he's saying he's going to do, it's still a bad look. Because, one, people want to be entertained and looking for a good fight.
So if Canelo Alvarez ends up stopping Gennady Golovkin, it's going to be a bad look. I'm going to be very interested in your explanation.
So if you fought Golovkin and he gave you two tough fights, and then now on DAZN they're charging $85 after lying and saying pay-per-view was dead, and they weren't going to be in the pay-per-view business. They literally said Canelo Triple G in the past would not be for a pay-per-view price. So on top of lying about that and saying pay-per-view is dead and doing commercials, including commercials with Canelo and Golovkin, claiming that pay-per-view was a thing of the past or passe, it's going to be a bad look either way. That's why.
Well, that wasn't really a great point to why Canelo Alvarez all in all, to where if he knocks out Gennady Golovkin, to where it's going to look bad. Because basically what your point is, oh, well, then it's just going to look like overall it isn't as, much as a good fight as what it was before. Well, are you going to be happy with anything, Mr. Ego? let's be real, because you didn't mind Gervonta Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero, that being on pay-per-view no matter how it ended. So once again, I get some of the points that Mr. Ego is stating, but is there a lot of hoping that Canelo Alvarez looks bad no matter how you put, no matter how he puts it? Yes, because he does not like Canelo. But anyway,
I'm starting to think about with this fight, because if he went in there and just demolished Golovkin in one round, people are going to be like, "What the f was that?" Golovkin never.
Well, I don't think that Canelo Alvarez is going to demolish him in one round, and Canelo all in all can state whatever he wants to. I think even he knows more than likely that he's not going to demolish Gennady Golovkin in one round. I think what Canelo Alvarez is hoping for, at least this is what I would be thinking if I were Canelo Alvarez, but who the hell knows? You never know what's going on through someone's mind. I would expect maybe to stop Gennady Golovkin if I was at my absolute best, and he still appeared to be a fighter that maybe was one or two paces down of what he was before, probably a couple of paces. I would expect to knock him out probably within about 9 to 10 rounds.
That bad, and then all of a sudden he's getting melted and mowed down. So that's not going to really help Canelo's brand. But then if the fight is too tough and or he loses or there's controversy, then that too is going to hurt Canelo. So I think Canelo put himself in a dangerous position with this fight, because he really put himself in a lose-lose type of situation where...
No, I don't really think it's a lose-lose type situation. I just think that you're stating that because you want people to think all in all that this is not good for his brand. Why are you trying to make people think that it's not good for his brand? Because you don't want there to be a Canelo Alvarez brand. But yet any fight that Gervonta Tank Davis takes, it's such a great fight. Rolly Romero, I'm buying that fight. Even though he was a complete bum. But it is what it is. Anyway.
There's not much great that can come. If you obliterate Golovkin, people will say you waited so long. He's not the same. You picked on an old man. and that's why it looked like that.
Well, people are going to state that no matter how the fight ends up going. So Canelo Alvarez really, when it comes down to it in this fight, what he just needs to focus on doing is that he needs to make sure that the fight, at least in his perspective, he needs to make sure that the fight, all in all, is probably a unanimous decision for him. Even if he can win 8 rounds to 4, that's what the target goal should be. Really, he should win this fight probably about 10 rounds to 2, 9 rounds to 3, if not even more. So if Canelo can come back and completely shut out Gennady Golovkin and then knock him out, that's probably the best situation possible. Now, I do understand what Mr. Ego is stating, but if Canelo Alvarez, all in all, does come back, and let's say he does obliterate Gennady Golovkin when it comes down to it, then all in all, a lot of people will say, well, he looked really good. Let's see how he looks in the Dimitri Bivol rematch. I think all in all, in that perspective, that is probably not going to look that bad. Now, if Canelo does overall win by some sort of very big controversy overall, like there was in the first fight when it was a draw, or if he ends up losing the fight, then yes, that is going to be very bad for his brand. That may even be a brand killer because Canelo does have to win this fight. He is going to be expected to win.
You know, that's why you were able to mow him down. And because Golovkin never got dropped or knocked out. So all of a sudden, if Canelo just blast him out, then people would be like, oh, that's clearly his age and, you know, he's regressed over time. But if Golovkin has a little bit something in the tank, and him and Jonathan Banks came with a good plan, and he's not really talking much, and they come and push the limits, and, you know, they got that one good fight left in them, then that's going to spell a lot of trouble because Canelo's coming off of a loss. And that's the other thing is Canelo, where would his mind be if the fight is much tougher, like the first 2 fights, than you expected because you overestimated Golovkin? I'm starting
I
to.
think you mean underestimated Golovkin. Well, maybe he could mean overall overestimated. Who knows? But it's going to be very interesting, and I do agree with Ego there. How is Canelo Alvarez going to take this fight mentally, especially if the fight does end up being tougher than what he once thought it was going to be? Now, do I think that Canelo is more than likely going to have that big of a problem? Probably not, but you never know because he is coming off of a loss. So we'll see what happens.
Starting to wonder about this fight. Let me know what you guys think. You know, I just started thinking because before I was like, oh, Canelo's going to just blow him out the water. But the amount of people, the other thing that made me think this is this. Everybody is underestimating Golovkin. Everybody is expecting nothing from him. Like if you go to a comment section, you go to a boxing forum, nobody's really expecting any type of performance. People are like, oh, he's old. He doesn't look the same. Deryevchenko.
Well, actually, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think everyone in your comment section might be saying that all in all because they may not like Canelo or Triple G that much. But I've actually seen quite a few people state that they believe that Gennady Golovkin is going to win this fight. I've seen a lot of people believe that all in all that this is going to be just like Juan Manuel Marquez versus Manny Pacquiao 4. So Canelo does need to take this fight seriously, but we'll see what happens. But I would say that probably a good 70 to 60% of the people that I have seen probably are favoring Canelo, but there are a certain amount of people that do believe that Gennady Golovkin could win this fight. I'm not one of those people, at least at the moment. I don't give him any more than a 30% chance. And with that chance, if he does win, in my view, it's probably because Canelo is not mentally the same after coming off of that loss, or he underestimated him, but we'll see what happens.
Hurt him. Murata hit him too much. You know, he's never fought at this weight class. So the dangerous thing for Canelo is this. The standard for Golovkin and the expected level of success is very low. So the bar is set low for Golovkin. So he literally has nothing to lose because no one's really, people are like, Canelo's gotten better over the years and Golovkin's got worse. So if Golovkin puts something together and makes this a tough fight, man, that spells trouble for Canelo's brand. We'll see how it plays out.
Well, I think that if it's controversial or if he loses, I think that it spells trouble for Canelo Alvarez's brand. But if it overall ends up being a competitive fight, I don't think that it really does a whole lot to Canelo's brand. Maybe it could lose some, it could also gain some, because then people might actually be more entertained by a Jamal Charlo matchup. Now, there's many people I don't know who are entertained by a Jamal Charlo matchup, but that's really more because it's really overall just a very popular matchup because they're both well known, and I don't think a lot of people really take a look at Jamal Charlo, including myself. And if he faces Canelo Alvarez at his best, I don't think a lot of people truly believe that Charlo's going to have that much of a chance. He could, but, we'll see. Not me saying that he should not take him seriously, but I'd give Jamal Charlo about the same amount of chance over Canelo Alvarez as what I would give probably a Caleb Plant, probably even a little bit less, because Jamal Charlo, in my view, is just a little bit too stiff.
Oh, SLC, subscribe, like, and comment because I'm the best in the business. 300,000 K. We're on the road to that. Let me know what you think of this video. We unpacked. Introducing.
But anyways, that's really about it. I just thought that video was very particularly interesting because Mr. Ego did bring up some very interesting points. Now, is he more than likely rooting against Canelo Alvarez in this fight? Yes, he is, but, it's going to be us, the logical and objective observers, to really see, all in all, or observers, to really see, who wins this fight and who isn't, or how both fighters look. It's going to be very particularly interesting. Very, very interesting. But anyways, can't wait for this Saturday. Let's see what happens. And that's about it for today.